EdTechMondays Kenya is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.
Hello and welcome to EdTech Mondays 2024. My name is Lily Bekele Piper and I am the new moderator for the show. Today's topic are the new education policies and their impact on technology-enabled education here in Kenya. In September 22, President William Ruto appointed a presidential working party on education reform in Kenya to address concerns raised by the public about the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, as well as the general need to carry out reform in the entire education sector. The competency-based curriculum, or CBC, is relatively new to Kenya, having been implemented since 2017. CBC has been met with mixed reviews by parents, teachers, and school leaders, with the cost and time required to implement the new curriculum, as well as the complexities of teacher training and assignments being among the concerns. In July 2023, the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform released a report which included 20 key recommendations. Some of these recommendations included reducing primary and junior school learning areas and lessons, and introducing new financing plans for tertiary education. The Working Party states in their reports that in transformational education for sustainable development, Kenya must reform her education institutions, harness digital revolution, and adopt creative ways of teaching and learning. Further, the sector should strive to develop skills by revitalization, research, innovation, and intellectual property in TVET and university education. In addition, the African Union has declared 2024 as the first ever year of education. The intersection of new education reforms in Kenya and a continental-wide commitment to creating resilient and quality education brings us to the question of where does technology for and in education fit on this new roadmap? Before we get started, let's hear from some of the participants at the 2024 Pwani EdTech Summit on their responses and reflections to these educational reforms.
Listening to the Presidential Working Party and the outcomes that came out of that, it's very interesting to me that the government is acknowledging that this is a big piece for us to achieve the education reforms that we are aiming for, that the government is owning to the fact that it cannot be done by any one person, and there's an intention to collaborate with other players in the ecosystem to drive better learning outcomes. So that stood out for me, just seeing that ownership, that is not a one-man job, that government is very willing to collaborate with other practitioners to just scale this and impact the learning outcomes. And for me, as I work with Metis and supporting other proximate leaders who are innovating for change, and hearing the government almost commit to being open to collaboration and scaling, that's really interesting for me. And I hope that there would be implementation to that effect, and that government would truly open its doors and say, okay, we found out that this is the way forward, and we know we can't do it alone, and we would work with other stakeholders like EdTech, East Africa, all the other organizations that are working to improve learning outcomes, so that we are able to achieve this collective impact of creating a world where learners actually thrive and have tangible learning outcomes.
So there are so many opportunities. One is to look at what's working in the region. What might work in Mombasa might not work in Kajiado or Homa Bay. So what is working, and also networking with several people so that they share their success stories, so that people can be able to adapt from different regions, different areas, especially when we come together from different aspects of life. We have educators, we have researchers, we have policymakers, we have donors in the space. So all those working together to ensure that EdTech is succeeding in several ways.
On a day-to-day, as a research assistant, we work with learners and teachers, and also seeing that these recommendations are also looking to retool the teachers through service and in-service training, so that they are able to change the mindsets of the teacher as they move from 844 to the new CBC curriculum. Was very interesting.
Today, we are pleased to be joined by two panelists, Dr. Robert Juma, a member of the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform, and Stephen Gatei, founder and CEO of Mwalimu Connect. And we are delighted to be joined by our sign language interpreter, Ms. Rose Omolo. And we invite you to follow along the conversation on X, with the handle EdTech Africa. So please join us there. Gentlemen, welcome to EdTech Mondays. We're pleased to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get started in our conversation, we would love to hear a little bit more about you. So Dr. Juma, if you don't mind introducing yourself and what you do to our listeners.
As you have said it, my name is Dr. Robert Juma Homalo. Having been a member of Presidential Working Party on Educational Reforms in Kenya, which was just concluded last year. And I'm also a tutor or a lecturer, and I also do consultancy outside. Yes, thank you.
Karibu, Dr. Juma.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Gate. I'm the founder and CEO of Mwalimu Connect. What we do at Mwalimu Connect, we actually have 3 key pillars. We upskill teachers with various programs in our country. We have a jobs board where we help schools recruit teachers, especially the young teachers who are talented. And we also give access to schools devices together with software, whereby the schools pay us termly.
Well, welcome. Very glad to have you both. Dr. Juma, let's start with you.
Yes.
The report was released last year. The reforms are in action already. What are you hearing from schools, from learners, from teachers about the new reforms announced by the committee?
What I'm hearing about this after the launch of the report is that learners are happy with the learning areas because a number of subjects were reduced. And also teachers are also happy because they are trying to cope up with the changes. The burden has been lessened, and the stakeholders are happy. The stakeholders, parents, teachers, and the learners are feeling okay.
The question of teacher training is a part of the reforms.
Yes.
So have we been able to provide additional training for teachers or parents on the changes that are now being implemented?
The trainings have been going on, retooling of those teachers, and we've been getting those reports because the TSC also took up the mandate to play that role very well. They have been doing it, and we can see it's ongoing because retooling is not just a one-off, but it's an ongoing exercise. Yes, that one I can say it's ongoing.
Given the scope of the recommendations, what do you believe is the opportunity for educational technology in preparing teachers for either the new changes or continuing to empower them to implement the current curriculum?
Yeah, I'll say technology comes in handy when it comes to teacher training. I'll give a case scenario. We at Mwalimu Connect are delivering in partnership with Microsoft to deliver their upskilling program to teachers, which involves 21st century skills. And we have a model whereby the teachers, it doesn't matter where they are, whether it's in Kakuma or Namanga, they're able to be trained and upskilled from the comfort of a simple mobile phone, and they're able to trickle the skills that they have in their classrooms.
That's exciting to hear that your work will continue to grow and create impact. In fact, the government has invested in training, over 70,000 teachers, in particular around in public and primary, around the digital learning program, the DLP. How will the DLP be situated within the revisions to the curriculum and support student learning and life skills development? Perhaps, Dr. Juma, you can speak to that, and Stephen, you could follow on from there.
About the TLP, we talk of by integrating the TLP within the broader curriculum and emphasizing its skills development. Students can acquire not only technical proficiency, but also the ability to navigate the digital world responsibly and ethically, preparing them for success in various aspects of their lives.
So I'd love to hear from both of you. What do we gain or what do we lose by combining these learning areas as it's specific to educational technology? I
would say that the success of combining these learning areas into pre-technical studies depend on the execution of the curriculum, the adaptability of teachers, and the ability to balance breadth and depth, or the width and depth in education. And the gains are, number one is interdisciplinary learning, whereby learners can benefit from a holistic interdisciplinary approach to education. When they combine these subjects together, there is something we call skills integration. They are integrating the skills of computer, the skills of business studies, and then you find that learners will develop broader skill set skill set. Yeah, another gain is relevancy of the curriculum. Now the CPC. The current and future job market demands learners could be better equipped with skills that are high in demand across various industries. Having talked about gains, we have losses.
Before we get to the losses, can I have Stephen respond to the gains? It might be helpful for us to understand, in order to achieve those gains, what maybe are some of the educational technology tools that will need to accompany some of these tremendous gains that we hope to make.
These will help our learners be equipped on a 360-degree view with their today's skills. They're able to adapt quickly, they're able to solve problems, they're able to identify problems, they're able to come up with solutions. On the digital skills, we all remember just the other day when the president said, I think it was somewhere called Captain Gay, that unabonyeza computer, unatoa dollar. But now you can try and imagine if our learners are equipped with the skills from preschool, from the foundation of education. By the time they get into the tertiary level of education, we won't even need the then president to come and remind them that they need the skills to bonyeza tara. In fact, it will be the learners trying to show the president what to do. So I believe we stand a lot to gain with that combination. And looking around, we all talk about problems in our communities. By equipping the learners with these skills, the solutions to our today problems and the tomorrow problems.
I'm curious to know, when you look at the landscape of educational technology in Kenya, Stephen, what do you think now could have an opportunity to come to the fore as a useful, practical skill for either teachers or learners to now achieve these gains? You know, what do we have everything we need already to make these strides?
I believe we're on the right track. We are progressing well, but if more training is done on the teacher, because I believe it's the teacher who is handling the whole program. If the teachers are well skilled and frequently skilled, they will be able to match, I don't know how to put it, but they'll be able to match the skills with the learner. What I mean the skills by the learner is, most of the learners today, if you give them a phone, in a week, they'll be able to understand everything in that phone. So I believe even to give the teachers more confidence as they are facing these today students, they need to be trained more so that they're able to trickle down that to the learners.
So Dr. Juma, you mentioned some losses that may potentially happen as we amalgamate some of these courses. Please continue on that point.
Yeah, the losses I see here is, when they combine the subjects, you find there is something we call death sacrifice. Meaning that, the time you'll have taken to understand one subject is divided. So less time is devoted in each of the subjects. So that one is a loss, because one will not become a specialty either in computer or in business. Another thing is the teacher expertise. Teacher expertise is a loss, because you find that it's challenging to find a teacher who has expertise in computer, business, and also those technical subjects. So that one is a big loss. Standardization challenge when it comes to assessment of learners, coming up with a standard to measure the level of understanding for each learner, it becomes difficult for those three areas. So that one is also a challenge, as from my point of view. There is also diverse student interest that we have also to talk about, because as you are bringing these subjects together, you put them together. A student, the interest is in computer, and he finds himself is dabbling with business. So it becomes very challenging for him now, because of that kind of interest that he has. So the time becomes a challenge.
Thank you for that summary. You've mentioned some really important points. Stephen, what educational tools might be available to us to respond to those now gaps that exist?
We need the infrastructure. I believe, for example, we already had the last mile connectivity where schools have electricity installed. There's a lot of work ongoing to have the schools, even in remote Kenya, have internet installed. I think now the next discussion or the next step is to have these resources, spread out across the country. I'm talking about devices, because if you look, for example, at some of the privileged schools, they've been able to share content within themselves. But what happens to the schools in remote Kenya? So I think the tools are needed, especially the devices. And of course, I'll add on top of that, even if the schools have the devices and the teachers have the devices, the teachers need to be skilled so that they're able to handle the tools.
We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about teacher training in just a moment. But I want to continue to think about the digital space in our tertiary education as well, because the reforms also spoke to tertiary education. And in fact, one mandate of the working group regarding tertiary education was to recommend a framework for operationalizing the National Open University of Kenya with a framework of open, distance, and e-learning. So really important option for students, even no matter where they are in the country, that they would be able to access education at the tertiary level. So the Open University, Dr. Juma, began enrolling students last year, the end of last year. Will we see a similar model roll out for levels of learning at secondary or even primary, where now the option for e-learning might be available for our younger learners?
When we talk of Open University, it has that's where we can say it proves successful if the National Open University or the NUC is called in the NUC, it proves successful. There may be a push to implement similar models at lower levels of education. And this expansion could focus on making quality education more accessible to a broader range of students or learners, especially in remote or underserved areas. So the shift towards ODEL at different education levels, it presents a transformative opportunity for technology to play a central role in shaping the future of education. The para-educational tech companies that we have outside there now, that is when it comes to opportunities that it will offer, they will have the chance to be key players in this transformation by offering innovative solutions that enhance the quality, accessibility, and inclusivity of education across the board. When I talk of inclusivity, we are talking of the educational SNE, special needs learners.
So let's talk about that a bit more, because I believe that there was these will be priorities: gender considerations, ASL regions. So, Stephen, how can we use educational technology to ensure educational equity?
Maybe let me add one point on what we're discussing about the online university courses. Machakos School did a pilot. We were talking about how that can be trickled down. Machakos School did a pilot whereby other schools joined a classroom. The pilot went out really well, and other schools were really interested to install that in their schools. But the biggest challenge, as Dr. Aria said, what happens to the schools in remote Kenya? What happens to them? As you all know, there is an issue, matters challenge the schools accessing devices. Maybe, for example, even Machakos School was able to afford a projector. That meant the schools that only joined were able to provide projectors. But what happens in those remote counties, for example? So I will suggest, or I will think, in those communities out there, the kids can be able to be brought at one center place. We should all remember that maybe some of these areas are sparsely populated, so you cannot be able to install devices everywhere. If, for example, the content that Machakos School shared with other schools on that online sort of classroom was recorded, there needs to be a platform whereby that recorded class can be shared to those in remote Kenya.
So the example that you cite about a pilot going well, there's excitement about this opportunity. Do we have the tools on ground to actually make that a reality at scale?
No. I don't think we are doing well on the tools part, and a lot has to be done. And that's where, for example, we at Mwalimu Connect are trying to give schools devices. We have a partnership with HP Factory. We are trying to give schools, especially remote schools, devices, and then they can be able to pay us pole. That is the only way we can be able to bring the schools at the bottom to at least come and try and compete with those at the top.
There is a newly established Kenya School of Teacher and Education Management that will be charged with in-service training for teachers. There will also be the continuation of the Kenya Teacher Training College for pre-service training. So perhaps both of you can respond to this. You're both deeply connected to teachers and to this sector. So Dr. Juma, let's start with you. Can these trainings be hosted on digital platforms, for example, so that learning resources remain available after the training? That way, teachers can reference it, once they're actually in the classroom working with students. And what tools will be employed to measure teacher development afterwards to see, was the training successful? Did they actually acquire the skills needed to now implement the reforms?
We need to have the, what we call, is it in-service? Yeah, in-service training of teachers. Yeah, so after every given period of time, teachers should be get updated or kept abreast of what is expected of them. And I think this is something that Mwalimu Connect is very much aware of, because especially the digital platform, retooling of teachers in the digital area is very key. And coming up with like the collaborative learning, setting up the collaborative learning is a way that will have to enable teachers to gain these skills and be able to use them to the learners in class. Yes. And also when it comes to assessment and monitoring, we need to keep them getting to understand what level or the measure at which they have gained the experience, so that they can be able to be in the right position to impart the same to the learners.
Stephen, do you want to respond to that about how these trainings maybe be more accessible and also measured?
Yes. I remember when we started our first upskilling program with our partner, I remember very well telling them that, look, I agree that the current model is in-house, but it will be very hard for us to reach each and every teacher in every corner of the country. What if we digitize this training or upskilling program, whereby a teacher anywhere, whether you're in Mandera, you're in Namanga, you're in Moranga, you're in Kericho, you're able to access these training programs. And for example, we've come up with a very interesting model whereby each and every week, once a week, after you've trained yourself online, there is a session whereby you come on board and then you find an educator and then you ask questions. Then you're able to proceed with upskilling by your own. So I believe it is very important, if we really want also to fast track this process, that we have the models online. Yeah.
Just on teacher training, we have a number of platforms that you have to ensure, or the number of tools that you have to use. We have the digital training platform, that is one, which has to be set. Then we have the webinar and virtual workshop. Allow them also to learn when they are even in a school. They don't have to come to where you are. When you set up such like things, they will be able to do it. There is also mobile apps whereby through the mobile app, the teacher will be able to learn, to get to know what is expected to be inseminated to the learners, and also for himself, maybe in terms of assessment, because some they are required to send the assessment scores to the central place somewhere. And then also there is discussion forums and the collaboration tools. When we talk of discussion forums, is implement discussion forums and the collaboration tools within the digital platforms to encourage communication and knowledge.
Thank you for that. Really important contributions. As we close, let me offer one more question to each of you. Stephen, I'll start with you. Two angles. One, what opportunities for new technology did these recommendations present? What new exciting possibilities maybe are possible for EdTech? And maybe what would you have liked to have seen in the recommendations that speak specifically to educational technology tools that we didn't see?
Okay. One, I think these opportunities will be able to help us in the EdTech space to create employment. And two, most importantly, we'll be able to think outside the box. We'll be able to be more creative. We'll be able to look around for the problems around us and be able to come out with solutions. I will also say that even as in the EdTech space, what we need now is a lot of collaboration, so that we're able to come up with solutions that are able to better the EdTech space.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Juma, I mentioned at the start that this is the year of education from the African Union, and the theme is educating an African fit for the 21st century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality, and relevant learning in Africa. So how do these new reforms prepare Kenyan students for the 21st century? And how does EdTech fit into that landscape, specifically here in Kenya?
So Kenya can leverage the momentum of these AU-led reforms to embrace and integrate innovative EdTech solutions that align with the goals of the year of education. It is crucial to address potential challenges that are facing education in Kenya, including digital divide issues. Digital divide issues, those are the issues that education is facing in Kenya, and ensure that the benefits of technology in education are accessible to all students across the country.
Thank you, Dr. Juma, for that. Thank you, Stephen Gatei, for being with us today. A really important conversation on the reforms happening in education here in Kenya, and we look forward to seeing what happens next. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you again to our esteemed panelists today, Dr. Robert Juma, Mr. Stephen Gatei, for joining us on this very important conversation. We also welcome your feedback and your comments. Please reach out to us on EdTech eAfrica on X. We would love to hear from you. And as always, we welcome you back next month for another edition of EdTech Monday. My name is Lily Bekala Piper, and I look forward to seeing you then.
EdTech Mondays Kenya is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.